You
Yeah,
know? Yeah, right?
I
Like,
agree.
you know, if really what you want to do is kind of captured by a certain level of effort, there's no point in, not everything needs to be perfectly maximized. I mean, some things do, but, and those are the things that where you should really put in the effort. But for something that's going to be kind of a, you know, a casual conversation about productivity, like, it doesn't necessarily need to be the fussiest thing.
I agree. I agree. And I'm kind of practicing imperfection these days. And
Exactly.
so, I find it's better to just do it than not do it at all, right? So,
Mhm.
and I see we have a few people here. Hey, Kristen. Hey, Rachel. Hey, Ellen. And we'll record it in case people want to see what we figured out tonight. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, and everybody, this is Lisa. I'm sure you all know her, famous author. And she developed this amazing program called BookFlow, which is all I use right now for all of my writing needs. And so, I kind of wanted to talk to her tonight first about BookFlow and then about like her own productivity. And then she's going to ask me some similar questions, because we both have a lot going on and we both love to be um, active and doing new things and following those big ideas. So tell us a little bit more about how BookFlow came about. Like, why did you start BookFlow, and how did you decide that there was a need for a program like BookFlow? And maybe if you want to just give us a general sense of BookFlow, I can also share my screen in a little bit and show people like what it is and why I'm always raving about this, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
writing
Yeah, and
tool.
I can share mine too. Yeah, well, I was teaching in a master's program out in Sierra Nevada, and you know I've been teaching workshops and I've been an editor for a really long time, and um, but teaching kind of one-on-one in an MFA program really gave me like a front row seat to how other people's process, right, to my students' process, and I started kind of to see the same challenges over and over, which was, it was all the same challenges that I even saw as an editor, you know, like when I was at Scholastic, Disney Press, like HarperCollins, like it's always this, when manuscripts have problems, they're often kind of similar kinds of problems, right? If they're not working, it's for a few reasons. So what I wanted to do was to create an online writing tool that would not only help people kind of through the process and support the writing, but also support the writer, because you know the number one problem for writers is just that they get discouraged, or they don't make daily progress, or they don't see the progress. And you know, when you're doing a kind of a big project like a novel or a collection of stories or a collection of verse or whatever, it's easy to get lost in the weeds. And so it's really important to like help people see the big picture as well as the smaller pieces. So I wanted to create something that did several things, kept people motivated and helped them stay organized. And so that's what BookFlow is. I always say, it's like if Scrivener met a Fitbit and they fell in love and got married in you know, in a ceremony officiated by Julia Cameron.
That's
So
amazing.
only writers understand all those references.
I totally want my next ceremony to be officiated by Julia Cameron.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And we could all stay fit by marrying a Fitbit, I guess.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that's cool. So you saw this need and then you
Yes.
attacked it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, part of it was like I kept sending my writers to go read books on writing, and they would do it, but then they would try to like do everything all at once. And I wanted something that almost forced them into focusing on the different elements and just remembering that there are different elements and you have to pay attention to each one, and then help them, you know, put it all together. So
Yeah.
yeah. So, but you are also busy with a million different things. So why don't you just, well, first of all, why don't you tell me like how you even use BookFlow? How are you using it? You say you use it for everything.
I use it for everything. So if I think of, the writer's loft as a room of requirement for writers,
Yeah.
like taking my hat off to, of course, J.K. Rowling,
Yeah.
I think of BookFlow as my pensieve. And it's
Okay.
just a place where I like put everything. And I promise to everybody who's here, this is not like a BookFlow advertisement, but it has just streamlined such of my own writing that I just had to talk to Lisa about that and like thank her for it and that sort of thing. And I think everybody should try it. Like everybody should try it and see if it works for them. I know some of my friends are diehard Scriveners, but my brain cannot do Scrivener. I don't know what the problem is, but let me see if I can share my screen and show, let's see, share screens. I'm going to share my desktop and you guys can see some of my world here. This is what we're doing right now, right? And then, so here's my main screen of BookFlow. And my favorite thing, of course, is this calendar. I generally take the weekends off. And you can see where I was revising outside of BookFlow, with editors and that sort of thing in Word. But I love that it keeps track of my writing goals. And so I have 35 projects here. And a lot of them, and a lot of them are not only manuscripts, but okay, so here is so look at all my tabs up on top of my computer screen. So I like to put things away when I'm done. But I was having this problem where tabs kind of are a to-do list for me. So during the course of the day, I will open up tabs and I know that I still have work to do when I still have tabs open. And some of them will carry on to tomorrow's. And so I needed a place to put my daily tabs. So, I have this, basically manuscript of just where I just put links to all the tabs that I have open that I don't want to forget for tomorrow. And so, so I'll shut them all down at night. And then the ones that I really need and are really using, I'll open up tomorrow, but it won't slow down my computer all that much. So things like that I do. I have all my finances for writing in one of these. I have all like the places where I, have sign-ins and what's my password and stuff. Like, of course I have Keeper on my phone, but I also have them in here. I mean, you could probably read them. I don't know if you can get to the back end of BookFlow. Lisa, stay out of my Ingram Spark.
No, the coding is such that it's randomized, so I'm afraid I'm able to read that. Sorry.
I'm just joking. And this one's like an email campaign. It's not a manuscript. So I put everything in here. And for me, it helps me know that like everything is in one place. I can find it. I can put it all away. And then these are the manuscripts that I'm working on right now. And I even have a list of manuscripts here. And this is where I keep all the metadata. So I have 20 scenes because they're all like, this is like my list of things that books that I have in various stage of progress. And then if you look, I have all the notes for like, okay, like how did I produce this book? And like all of the information for this one book is here. So I organize everything in BookFlow, and I really like it. And it's just a much easier process for me with the drag and drop and everything like that than most of the tools that I've used like Scrivener. So
Right.
Yeah, that's how I
Wow,
do.
that's really interesting. That's like a very different way of using it from a lot of people. That's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And I never go, like my book Bible is really not in there. I mean, all the projects I've been working on recently are fiction. And I used to use this other program are nonfiction. And I used to use this other program for fiction. And I could put pictures and things and stuff like that there for like my book Bibles and things like that. So I haven't figured that part out about BookFlow. And I'd love if you could allow us to have pictures in there just for me to like remember what this character looks like and things like that.
No, that's planned for like a future release. I want that too. Absolutely. Especially I won't be able to, like, first we've got to fully mobile, which right now mobile only, but you know, I want people to be able to be like, click, now I have that, all that. And now, okay, and Pam wants color coding. All right.
Yes. Pam wants to color code my to-do list back here.
I love the color coding. So the interesting thing about working on a tool like this, and I'm not really like someone who ever thought I would be working on a you know, cloud-based tool, but what's really interesting is the prioritization process and like figuring out, you know, what's most important, what's going to benefit most users, and what order to like execute things in. Um, and the other challenge is in keeping things really simple. So part of why, you know, the people who love Scrivener love the complexity.
Yeah.
And the people who love Scrivener love it. It works for them. That's great. But the problem is that if you add in too many features, every time you start adding in features, you're adding in layers of complexity, which, like, again, so much of my whole idea of productivity is really about, it's not about doing a lot of things. It's about doing the most important things.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to, because there's no point in doing a lot if what you're doing is not of huge importance to, you know, to what you're trying to accomplish, right? You know that.
Yeah.
But anyway, you've got to prioritize all the time. And so, you know, so that was really part of the project, was in helping people determine what essential elements you need, you know, because again, sometimes we like to work as writers, and I often work this way. I'll go from the details to the bigger piece. Like I'll understand a character in terms of like, oh, I just realized that she has a secret box where she keeps, you know, her child, you know, things from her childhood, and in there is glass. Okay, so, but it's important to balance like not only the glass, but also the larger narrative arc, and to be able to move and forth between those, seeing the whole purpose tale, right? You don't want to be introducing details and elements going anywhere or serving the story. So whatever that story is, even nonfiction or whatever, you know. So, and so that's kind of the bigger project within the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, with the writer's loft, like you could do endless amounts of programming, I would assume, but it's really important to choose that which is going to best serve what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that today, and how we all have to be kind of protective of their time. Like I could do endless things for the writer's loft. Like that could fill up my entire day and night if I wanted it to. And I think it's really important that, you know, and for me, that's kind of my day job. Like it's a lovely day job, but it's still a day job. And so, you know, I have to be very protective of, you know, that process of like, okay, well, when am I going to be drafting my new words today? When am I going to be finishing up those edits to send that next workbook to, you know, the book designer? When am I gonna, you know, and I think that, you know, writing itself can be this endless passion as well, where, you know, like you can always do more, And so I think, and when we talk about prioritizing things, you know, I kind of, you know, I've always been very mindful, and especially since I'm putting out workbooks about talking to people about, you know, being productive and that sort of thing, it makes me really kind of drill down. And so when I was thinking about how do I actually prioritize my to-do list, you know, for the day, for the week, for the month, like what ways do I do that? And I realized that, you know, the most important thing to me are my relationships with people. And so I prioritize my to-do list based on people, you know, and so it makes it very clear to me, and it has the most emotional response to me as well. Like, you know, I feel very guilty if, you know, if I'm late for one of my like very, very close critique partners. Like I'm not going to let that go very long because I will have such a negative emotional reaction to letting that hang over me.
Yeah.
And so setting up my to-do list, being like, I have to do this because, Kristen will be stressed out if I don't, do this one thing about the anthology. Hey, Kristen, like that is so motivating to me getting that done. Or, if I'm darn right, says Kristen.
Love that.
Right?
Love it.
And so for me, the way into my to-do list is always the people attached to it. And I think that everybody kind of can be more effective if they decide, like, okay, what's their priority? And if their priority is, this one book they're working on, or their kids, or their day job, then that has to be like the way that they prioritize their to-do list, right? Like you just, because otherwise you get emotional discourse the entire time, like you're just out of sync, and that's just no way to be effective. So.
Right. I mean, if you look at like studies and stuff of motivation, like one of the most important things is people have to want to do the thing that they are keep telling themselves they should do. Right. Like, so telling yourself you should do something is actually a very poor motivator. And that's obviously why it's so hard for some people to lose weight or stop smoking or whatever it is, like, because they're like, oh, I really should do that. But like that kind of doesn't cut it in the mind, right? You have to actually want to do it. So if you can refocus your mind to the reasons for wanting to do something, and for you it sounds like that emotional connection is totally at the core of that, then it's much easier to do it, rather than like, oh god, I gotta do those 200 words today, or whatever your goal is. It feels a little arbitrary,
right?
So,
you have to know your why. Like, why would this be important?
Yes, absolutely. You've got to know why, and you've got to want that why. And absolutely, I despise letting my critique group readers down. I never would. If they send me a manuscript, I'm reading that thing, so, and also that's always fun. Once you're into it, it's always fun.
Yes.
The hardest part is like the part right before doing it. It's so much harder to not do something than it is to do it. Right? Like all that time around not doing it, all that time thinking like, the resistance, like I don't want to, or then if you don't do it and then you're like feel yucky, like all of that is so much worse than just doing the thing.
No, it is that dread, and the feeling that you're past due. Like, I hate that feeling of like, it's like the library book finds when we were kids, like you knew that first day that the library book, like was due, and you were like, oh, I missed it, and now I have a fine. And then every day it just gets worse and worse and worse. And you're like, oh my gosh,
You're bringing up some feelings for me, because I actually had a library book hidden in my room for a full year and a half, because the fine, I was concerned about the fine, and then I knew it was growing and growing, and it got out of control, and it was like the damn Telltale Heart library book, right? Like I could feel it pulsing there, hidden under my bed. And finally one day I went in, to pay the fine, and this was like in the 80s. So I think I ended up paying like $3, right?
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even kidding. It was, in my mind, it was like $80,000, right? As like a young kid. But in the reality, and when I realized it was so much less than I thought, and could handle it, and then it was done. It completely changed my relationship with the library. Like, the library was a place I didn't want to go. It was a place I had like fear and resentment around, all while that book was thumping away. And I don't even know what that book was. Probably some like nonfiction book on elephants or something, like not worth all the stress, basically. Yeah.
But we have this unrealistic, understanding, and this shame, like that shame, is such a such a kind of unmotivating force. Like you just can't get unstuck from it, right? And
Right.
so often, you know, like we experience shame about things on our to-do list that nobody else feels. Like we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so late, and you know, so and so is going to be so angry or whatever, and it's just our own internalization of like shame,
Right.
and it's not even real, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an inhibitor to actually doing the things that if you just did it,
Yeah.
it would be fine.
Well, and that's why one of my secret processes is when I sit down to write or sit down to even attack my to-do list, you know, I start out with in a place of forgiveness and gratitude. Because a lot of times I come to the keyboard with a bit of shame, like, oh, I'm just late on this. I haven't, you know, like I haven't kept up my end of the bargain on this. And so I have to forgive myself for that right off the bat, and then practice gratitude to kind of lift myself back up and just be like, I'm just really grateful that, you know, like whatever's going well in my life, I'm like, I'm grateful for this one thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that, you know, like I haven't gotten a hold of like the shame monster yet, but like I'm definitely working on it. And I definitely, you know, like kind of sit down and try to put those things aside and try to forgive myself those things, because it just immobilizes you. It's not good for you. It's not good for the people that you're, you know, pushing the feelings on, like so-and-so is going to be angry at me. Like it's not good for them either when you continue to not do the stuff you want to do, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just doesn't benefit anyone.
No.
So what does a day in your life look like?
This is a good question. So, you know, we're in pandemic times, and
Yeah.
you know, every day looks the same but different at the same time, you know, and I feel like, you know, there's kind of this undue stress that's kind of coming from like this nebulous place of like, you know, just because of these weird times that we live in. And so I basically, I sit down with coffee whenever I get up. And I say that because some nights I don't sleep. And so some days, you know, I'm getting up behind the family, you know. I have one teenager that I always wake up for. So that's good.
Yes. Can count
But
on them.
you know, normally my husband's already out the door at work and that sort of thing. And so my goal is before I answer email or before I do anything else, I pay myself first. And my trigger is my coffee. So I sit there with coffee, and before I finish my last sip of coffee, I have to be finished with the like drafting new words for the day. And so like connecting that with coffee is really important to me, because otherwise I think I'd be like opening email and doing work. And once I go down that rabbit hole of work, like I said, like I could fill my entire day, you know, with the joy of work, you know, and instead I want to pay myself first. And so I start off with, you know, writing my new words. I check in with my accountability partner, who right now is Natasha and Alicia and Chris Asselin. And so, you know, I just make sure they're motivated, I'm motivated. Do they need anything? Do I need anything? And then after I get those words in, I look and see like what's priority today, you know? But I also prioritize exercise, and I prioritize something that feeds me every day. So, you know, because otherwise I find that, you know, like I'm not filled up enough to fill other people up.
Right.
And so those kind of 4 priorities I have during the day. So no matter what work I have to do, like I, you know, definitely get out for a run. And I definitely, you know, I fill my happy notes journal one thing per day that somebody has said to me or emailed me or tweeted at me or something that's like something they're grateful for that I've done. And so, you know, I do this kind of thing. So yeah. And that's because I realized that I've put this new workbook out into the world, but I don't always get feedback for it. So I was feeling kind of like, oh, nobody likes what I do, which is ridiculous because like I do a lot that people like. And so I'm like, I just need to start collecting these things that people say to me so that I can have them and look at them whenever I'm feeling like, all right, I need to fill the well. So
That is such a great idea.
is that
And
fun?
yeah, Like,
Yeah.
I need that because, you know, the funny thing about that is like the brain is neurologically negative feedback and negative information is much stickier than positive information. So, you know, like, and that makes sense from a cultural, from a like an evolutionary standpoint, right? Like you want to remember that poison berry, right? It doesn't really matter like that you remember all of the green grass, whatever. You need to remember the terrible one. So, but what me, negative feedback, negative, you know, it's in your mind echo there it louder in that chamber of your mind than the positive stuff. But we all get positive feedback time. It's just not quite as sticky. So having location, I love the physical location to keep it there, and you can turn the pages, and that'll bring in the, you know, the tactile part of your brain to bring you back to the page to see that. I think that's like so vital, and I love that, and I'm immediately stealing it and
Awesome.
going to tell everyone I thought of it.
Oh, good. Do it.
No, I give you credit. The other thing that I was super interested in was in your sort of opening act there. You're saying that you anchor yourself with a coffee, and then you pay yourself first with the writing. And can you tell I've been reading like 8 million like studies on motivation, but like it's if you want to do something, if you link it to something that you're already doing,
Yep.
and if you link it to something you want to do, you're more likely to do it. So what I actually have a very similar ritual, and I happen to get up before everyone in my house. That's partially because I like to get up early, but that habit developed when I was in graduate school getting my MFA. And my daughter was like 3 and 4. And so if I wanted to get any reading or writing done, it had to be in that time before she woke up. So I wake up and I drink my coffee, and that's actually when I read. And for me, it's really important to keep reading because, you know, I believe all ideas are built on other ideas. Like you've got to keep that that, you know, influx coming so that your synapses can start linking things. So, but it's exactly the same thing. That's the thing I do before anyone else. And the other thing I do that's very similar to what you do, I have my planner. And this is the best, it's called the Best Life Planner, which is like super cheesy. And yet I still love it. So, and they have space every day. This is today. And they have space in the morning and in the evening to write things you're grateful for.
Oh, nice.
And so, you know, just starting with that reflection, again, like links you to like things that are going well. So you're always starting out with that right mindset. And it's not, you don't start out with a deprivation mindset or like a stress mindset, like, oh God, this is what I have to do. It's more like, oh, you know, here's what's going well. And then I also, you know, I have a list of all of my various buckets, and I'm like you know, there's like kids, there's like, a co-working space that I'm on the board of. I'm the president of the board for the Northampton Education Foundation. I've got BookFlow, and I'm writing as well. And so I've got all my buckets, my gorgeous chaos. And so within each thing, I have to, you know, write it all out and then prioritize in each thing. And then I time block.
Okay.
So
awesome.
I prioritized each thing. I was like, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this time block is like 1, 2, 3, so that I, you know, and I have the corresponding thing. There's a million ways to skin the cat, but again, it's all a question of like knowing what's most important, like what you need to get accomplished that day. Otherwise, I could really probably spend the day just responding to emails.
Right. Because it feels like that's the fire you need to put out. And it's not. Like it's totally, and, you know, when you train people that you're not going to respond to their emails within like 30 seconds or something like that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
they start sending you less emails. Like if you go like a week or something without responding to an email, and I'm not saying this is my practice, like everybody don't freak out who needs to send me an email. Like I'm good replying within a day, but people will start to send you less emails because things won't be so important, you know? And I think it's important to train people into how we work instead of reacting to how other people work, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm not ready for this email right now. I'm going to need to take a couple days. That's what I'm going to do, you know, like that sort of thing, rather than like, oh, this other person has emailed me this and it seems very important. And so I must drop everything. Right.
Yeah. Well, the thing I need to resist more, and this is a room for improvement for me. I have a friend, Gail, who once said to me, like, Lisa, you should not be reading emails. You should be processing emails.
Hmm.
Her point was, when we stop and we read each email as it comes in, even if we decide to respond to it later, it's still taken this moment, it's still interrupted our work.
Yeah.
So instead, if you choose the moment when you're processing emails and you're just reading them then, and you're processing them all immediately, you can actually be a lot more efficient about responding to things. This is not something that I practice well, actually. Like about need to be a little more deliberate about fighting. But when I have managed to do it, she's right. It is a much more efficient way to use that tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could totally see that. And that whole idea of, you know, decision fatigue, like how many times that you, like how many times you touch a piece of paper, you know, and before it ends up where it needs to go is kind of the same thing with email. Like how many times do you open it and read it and think about it before you act on it, you know, and all that, you know, that's like if you do it 3 or 4 times, it's all this decision fatigue, you know, instead of that one time when you were ready to process it. Right.
Right. Exactly. I have an interesting challenge, and I think you have the same challenge, which is like Facebook pages where we're like fostering a community and we want to check in, but then of course you can also fall into a Facebook hole. How do you like handle that?
Yeah, so I'm really specific about, you know, when I go to Facebook, I go deliberately to the groups that feed me. And I know why I'm going there. You know, I'll go to the Writer's Loft to, you know, encourage people and foster community. I will go to certain other Facebook groups just for, you know, enthusiasm or, you know, building me up, you know, as in like, you know, you like there's some Facebook groups that I go there and it's all like stories of success by authors, you know, and that sort of thing. So
I'm sure that's wonderful, but for me, that might be like,
and then there's, you know, there's actually a productivity Facebook group that I do go to and that sort of thing. And those people are just all about like, have you gotten your words done, you know? And so I know why I'm going to Facebook, and I don't do that whole thing where I'm like, oh, let me just click on my home button and see what's just like coming down the pike, you know?
Doom scroll this.
Yeah, I know.
What's on fire now?
What's on fire now? Yeah. And so because that's the rabbit hole, you know, and that's where I start to have feelings, and you know, it pulls me out of my being productive. But it's hard today because Facebook is a part of, you know, my day job and the things that I want to be connected to. But there are really negative sides of, you know, the social media thing. I haven't been on Twitter in like 3 or 4 years. And I still have a Twitter account. I do Instagram just when I'm traveling. I take pictures, very specifically, I take pictures of, you know, like wall art and graffiti and things like that. And that's all I do. And so, you know, like I don't know, it's hard to enjoy social media. It really is.
Are we enjoying it? No, I'm just kidding. I write a lot actually, but the rest of it is, it's a real challenge. And so, you know, I have this app actually that I got called Freedom. Do you ever use it?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I have kind of like, again, like the coffee, I have my other little ritual, which is when I'm ready to, you know, settle in and really work productively, I light a very particular candle that smells nice.
Nice.
And it's green, and I put on my Freedom blocking software, which also has like a green like butterfly as its logo. And then that's kind of like the doctor is in sign.
Okay.
Right. And that's when I really I'm like, okay, that little moment is over, and this new moment is beginning, so that then I can have that block where I'm really concentrating and not like, oh, let me see if anyone said anything I should be enraged about, which they usually have.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and I love that idea of, a shortcut into the work. Like your brain is suddenly like, okay, now we've shifted gears and I'm already into the work. And I think, for me, having everything that I need for work and elsewhere in BookFlow does that for me. Because when I go in to check one thing, I'm like, oh, here's a manuscript. I'm just gonna open that up, and it's hard to open up a manuscript and not work, it's hard to not get those words in. So, I mean, a lot of times just opening up the manuscript, but I love the whole, here's a candle and here's the green screen, the green logo, and it's all coming together. Now, I know BookFlow is online, so can you, is that an approved thing that your app shuts off all the other internet and not that, or
For Freedom?
Work for Freedom? Yeah.
Yes. So when you get Freedom, you can actually tell it what sites to shut off.
Okay.
And you can just be like, you can have it shut off like all of your connection, or you can just say, okay, just the distracting websites that I listed, and just for this computer. And it was cool because actually Freedom contacted me a while back, and they were like, hey, we read about BookFlow, we would like to, add you into our partners program. So I was like, oh, that's great, because actually I already used you. So, yeah. So anyway, so that was just kind of one cool random thing. But I have used that for years and years, ever since it was in its old iteration where it would just shut everything down, all internet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that was kind of a problem, because sometimes you'd be like, oh, wait, I need to look something up. I need to do a little research, and then you would have to reboot your whole computer. It's not like that anymore. It's a little more sophisticated.
Oh, that's good. Because occasionally I need to check the spelling on phrases, which, and so I'd have an open tab for that kind of ridiculous thing. I don't know how to spell things, so I need the speller tab open. Spell check's not enough for me. So
yes. Yeah. And I'm always looking up something weird. It's you've got some detail. I always like to joke about writer browser histories where it's we're researching poisonous, spiders of Western Massachusetts, right?
Right.
The plot point, I swear.
Yeah. Sometimes I talk to the powers that be, don't worry, do not put me on any blacklist. I'm just a reader.
I know. Yeah, you kind of want to just mention that to your phone.
Right.
I'm looking this up for a plot.
I mention that on Facebook all the time. Whenever I'm Facebook messaging something sensitive, I'm like, it's okay, Facebook.
I know.
We're all good here.
Yeah.
But
I also have an Amazon Echo. I don't like to say her name because then she wakes up, but
yes.
I always like to let her know why.
Right? It's okay.
Always keeping an ear out. Yeah.
One of the other productivity things I love is I have such a competitive spirit, and so if anybody ever wants to do a write sprint with me, I am on top of it, and I get really belligerent about winning it and that sort of thing. And so I've been hanging out at my Write Club these days.
What is that?
Yeah, it's just a place where people are sprinting all the time, and so you can go in and just and I think for 20 minutes out of 30, there's a sprint going on. And so you can hit it and you can type your words into the box and then copy and paste it wherever you go. And it's hey, you contributed half the words in that sprint, and it's really fun. So, all these fun things, you can find something for anybody to, to get that?
So I am alternately like competitive and completely non-competitive. So this is my own thing. Like if I'm not winning, then I'm like, well, I guess I don't want to be playing this.
I'm not your friend anymore.
I'm not friends, okay? No, I'm not in last place. You are. You know, I don't believe in this. So I'm always trying to like think about like, okay, well, what would be a good cooperative goal, like a cooperative competitive goal? And I'm not really sure. Like maybe we could have, you know, people all contributing, sort of like what you're describing, but like contributing to writing the same number of words as are in Ulysses or whatever it is. Like, yeah.
And that's like during Nano, like everybody's contributing to this group goal, you know, like how many words has Metro West Boston, you know, written today and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Right. Again. Yeah, I think Nano is great, but I'm kind of a little divided on it because I feel like it's so important to be, if you're going to do it, it's like you have to kind of do the prep work, right? Like you have to be mindful of it. And they actually, I think the Nano people say only like 10% of people finish it, right? It's like,
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, because I do feel like there are some people who are like me who miss a day and then are like, I'm crap. I'm a horrible person, or whatever it is, you know, they get discouraged. So, you know, I read a book by this one guy, and one thing he said was like, it's important to, if you're trying to develop a daily habit, if you miss a day, it's just important to remember not to make it 2 days, right? Like, because if you make it 2 days, and to not let yourself get derailed.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And the goals in Nano are so lofty that if you miss a day, it almost feels like there's no way you can catch up, right? Because it's kind of over the word count that most people write in a day anyway, you know?
Yeah, it's a reach for sure.
It's a reach. I do love Nano. Like I love
it's great. It can't be the energy.
Yeah, the energy is amazing. But I am much more comfortable, like, you know, I'm much more comfortable at about 1,000 words a day. And then I don't burn out, and then I can do revision as well, and I can do my other work, you know. So I think everybody needs to find like what's their word count, you know, that they can keep up. And I generally don't write on the weekends, but I know my writing partners need to, or they lose the thread. They're like, we can't take a day off, you know.
And there are some people for whom that's legitimately the only time they can be writing. And I know people who much prefer to write in a big fat block, right? Like they don't want to be fitting it in like a half an hour or 40 minutes around something. They want like 5 hours. And if that's, I mean, again, part of the thing about productivity is knowing how you best work, and also when you best work. Like, first, you know, writing in the morning is not for everybody. Like for some people, it's late at night. For some people, it's like mid-afternoon, and just kind of, and then there's some people who flex, you know, they can kind of do anything. But for me, if I don't write in the morning, the writing is not happening.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. Noon is like, afternoon I can edit, but my writing juice is just all gone.
Yeah. My problem is when I put everything on project status, like writing and exercise and like all these things. And I'm like, if I don't do them first thing in the morning, like when is it going to get done? And so I have to kind of like figure out like, okay, what is, you know, the priority? What's the main thing that really needs to be on project status? Like what habit am I letting go of that I need to really focus on? So, yeah.
You read those like Miracle Morning. It's like start every morning by doing yoga, meditating, making a list of your life goals, calling a friend, you know, and it's like pretty soon your morning has got like 40. It's like more stressful to try to do all of those things than it would be to just pick the one thing from that feels like it's feeding you, make that your priority, and then, you know, kind of go about your business.
Right. Well, and I think that that's the most important thing is that everybody works differently. And so like, I totally bought like the Miracle Morning book when it came out. And I was like, this will solve all my problems. You know, like everybody's like, I have this one thing will solve everybody's problem. And I think Like there's no one thing, right? Like it's different for everyone. And so that's a part of the process is like what works for you right now, because in a week, like your life's going to be a little different. And, you know, so you might have to be flexible about what works in a week. And I think, you know, and I think that that's kind of a little bit of what the pandemic taught me is that like it's great to have structured routines, but it's more important to have flexible routines. Like I will write every day and connect it to my coffee rather than sitting in a coffee house. You know, like I will, you know, like even though like everything is different right at this moment, like the things that are important to me are still getting done because I'm connecting them to things in my life that make sense. You know, rather than being like, okay, my kids are going to go to school in September, you know, like, well, that's not happening, you know? And so
not in the normal way, right?
yeah. And so that idea of like, I'll get the kids on the bus and then I'll sit down and write, you know, like that's not going to work. So like, but if I have my coffee, I know I'm going to write because that's the routine. And so I think being flexible with the routine is just, the pandemic has taught us so much about that. And I know people who write in coffee houses, and so they've had to like download, you know, the sounds of coffee houses, you know, and that's
I think they actually have that on Freedom too. You can turn off your thing and turn on the like the coffee house in New York sounds or the coffee house in Paris.
What? That is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, they have like different sounds from different like major cities around the world. So if you're like, I'm gonna work in a coffee house in Japan today or Sweden or whatever, you can have those sounds. So
like in France, do they just like admonish you in the coffee house?
I guess so, right? Like, yeah.
Oh,
they're probably like, excuse me, American tourist, but like, could you please work somewhere else? I don't
right?
know.
Aren't you supposed to be home for the pandemic? You're doing that poorly.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So I think that's been kind of my like, you know, like at first I thought that, you know, kind of balance was about repeating the same thing every day that works for me. And I think, you know, when the pandemic hit, like that just didn't work anymore. And I had to kind of revamp everything. And I think knowing what's important for me to do every day and finding those moments that I can attach them to something in my life that works, I think has been kind of my way through. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Same here. I read an interesting thing. Like I'm always interested in etymology. So like, I read recently that the word priority, you know, came into the English language in around 1400 and was never used in the plural until just the past century. So priority means the prior thing, right? The first thing, the one. So you can't have multiple priorities. Like, right. And so it's interesting that in the last century, it did become like, oh, we're prioritizing the multiple priorities. And I'm now trying to like retrain my brain to be like, okay, what is the priority and what are the other important things?
Right.
But like, what's the priority, you know? And what is again, it always comes back to like, what is the essential big picture goal?
Yeah.
Like, you know, what are we trying to accomplish here? And, you know, bearing that in mind allows you to then reflect like, okay, in this day that I wrote down the order of things that I would accomplish, which of these things were the things that were helping me toward my goal? That's another thing I do try to do at night is reflect on like, okay, great, I scratched all that stuff off my to-do list, but were those actually the right things that I you know, just got to be honest with yourself. Like sometimes it's like, I finally wrote that email and I feel great for having written it, but like, actually, maybe that could have waited another day, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's really important too, is like, how do we feel at night? Like, do we feel fulfilled? Like, did we get like the important things done that we wanted to get done? And if the answer is no, like that's okay. But just know that going into the next day, like how fulfilled. And I think that's kind of why, you know, when I focus on like the habits that I really, really want to keep, like at the end of the day, I'm like, if I drafted some words, if I went for a run, if I kind of, you know, like remembered why this is important to me by like printing out and putting in my little book, like words of thankfulness, you know, like that other people say, which is just so sweet. Um, and what's my other thing? I mean, that's pretty much it. Like if I do those three things, like, well, and I do my work stuff, right? Like if the work things
Yeah.
don't seem to be like I'm drowning, then I feel pretty good at the end of the night. Like I've had a good day. And I feel like I can go to bed happily. But if at night, you know, I go to bed and I'm like, I just don't feel satisfied, like it feels like that day was unfinished, I think it's really important to say like, okay, why? Like, why did that day feel unfinished? Why do I not feel fulfilled? And then, you know, like that's a note for the next day. Like maybe you're focusing on the wrong things, right?
Right. Exactly. And
Yeah,
you're allowed to do that sometimes.
totally.
You
Totally.
know, right? Like that's you. This is another thing I always say: you cannot be working at maximum efficiency 100% of the time, right?
No,
Like, you know, and it's not even good for you to do it.
no. And
You know,
I am a big fan of fun. You know, like if I don't have fun in my day, like that's a problem.
that day is garbage.
That day
Yeah,
is garbage.
yeah. Fun, fun really needs to be on there.
Fun needs to be on there. And I think, you know, like I do not believe in multitasking. I believe in like one thing at a time. And sometimes when we're parents, you know, that one thing is our kids. And like sometimes we just have to let everything slide and that's okay, you know. And there have been so many times in my life, you know, like including most of August where I was like, my kid's going back to college during a pandemic, let's just focus on that for a while, you know.
Exactly.
And that's all you can do. And I think that there's, you know, when we think about being women in this world and think about, you know, having it all, you know, like that's always going to be my first thing is like, are my kids okay? And then once that's okay, you know, like then everything else follows. But one thing at a time, man, you know, like I'm not a multitasker. I do one thing and I focus on it and that's it.
Right, right. Yeah, you know, I do feel like multitasking, there probably are people who do it very well. I am one of those people who likes to think I do it well, but actually do it really badly. I'm not good at it, you know. And like even today, I was just trying to like get some stuff done really fast, and I posted in my Facebook group like "Happy Monday, everyone," and like somebody was like, "It's Tuesday." I was like, attention to detail, you know. So yeah, maybe should have been a little more clearly focused. But again, it was just like, oh God, I need to, you know, just like, you know, greet people for it was the beginning of the week as far as I was concerned.
Well, and I think that there's such grace in that, you know, like Lisa doesn't know what day of the week is. It's okay, everybody.
Hilarious.
You know, like, yeah, like everybody makes mistakes. And I think being human is one of those things that, you know, maybe is the most graceful thing right now, you know?
Well, that's good.
It is. It is.
Because that's what everybody's getting.
Well, you know, and we talked about like amnesty at libraries and things like that. Like secretly Sunday is my amnesty day. And so like every Sunday I'm like, anything that I was feeling shameful about this week that I didn't get done, like I have my permission to get it done on Sunday because the world stops on Sunday, right? Like nobody's working on Sunday. Except during the pandemic, Sunday is not like Sunday. It's just any other day of the week, which
one
is
more day
thrown
that
me for another loop. But this week I was like, I have 2 amnesty days. I've got Sunday and I have Monday, and I was so excited. I'm like all those things that, you know, I've been trying to get to and have been feeling like, you know, they've been bogging me down. Like I get 2 amnesty days this week. So, and I feel like that gives me so much permission to get done all that crap that I've been feeling bad about doing.
Well, right. The other thing that I often believe about myself is that like when I list out the stuff I think I can do in a day, it's like,
oh my gosh,
it's probably like a week's worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it is very important for me to schedule out one of those blocks. And you can even see it here. I even did it today with like an as needed, like, you know, like whatever of those many things that I said I was going to get done that actually didn't get done.
Yep.
Throw that, or something urgent that comes up that you weren't counting on. You know, the dogs barfed on the carpet, or, you know, whatever. Like there is some extra time built into the day, like honoring those margins around things is really important to do. No, you do not. I mean, now you do. Now, like I was always kind of planning things as if I would instantaneously teleport from like one meeting to another. Now everything's via Zoom, so you actually can. But but even so, you need time to switch gears. Like, you know, going from your child's online telehealth to like meeting on productivity.
Right? So at least we've been teleporting correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and that's interesting. Like when I get you know, when I have too many work things going on, you'll notice like my house gets messier and messier, and I just
girl, that is the first to go.
And I start to ignore stuff until they pile up, but then it becomes an irritant, right? Like, so every time you pass that pile of laundry, you're like, that's getting me down. You know what I mean? And you start like feeling those things. And so like, and I say that because there is cat barf in my house that I haven't cleaned up yet. So when you were like, the dog barfs and everything stops and I clean it up, I'm like, oh, wait a second, that happened. Wait, I still have to deal with that. So
the other day I woke up, this is a side note, everybody's side note, but like I woke up and I was like, wow, I dreamed this deeply metaphorical dream that like I was looking for my white hydrangeas that bloom every September. And I went and it had been cut down mysteriously. And instead there were weeds there. And I was like, wow, what a powerful metaphor. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I went outside and no, that had happened. Like I had noticed it the day before and I had even commented on it. But then I guess I was like, God, it's so weird. Like, I'm not really sure how that happened. But it did. Well, and apparently I need to like call somebody to get a new hydrangea bush.
Oh no. Well, the flip side of that is that I have a surprise pumpkin patch in my front yard.
Oh.
Like so delightful. Like it's my favorite thing on earth. And like I must have gotten rid of a pumpkin right off my front steps. And so now we have pumpkin patches, and I've had pumpkin patches deliberately before and they've never produced pumpkins.
No. And now I bet it's like Cinderella out there.
Yeah, it is. I have pumpkins galore. So I'm very, very excited.
Okay. See, that's a metaphor too. That's you just never know what actual productive thing is going to be. Like sometimes trying to force something productive, like I'm planting you, pumpkin plant, doesn't make it happen. And then all of a sudden the time is right and the pumpkins appear.
It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty good with a metaphor. Anyway.
Well, as much as I like love like you and I just like chatting it up, does anybody have questions? Like, I feel like we've just been kind of
right. There's people listening to this.
There's other people in the room like, hey, Anna and Autumn and Beth and Ellen and Janet and Kristen and Rachel and Robin, who is not my aunt, but has the same name as my aunt. Hey, Robin Stein. So anyway, do you guys have any questions? And Pam's here too. And I don't see any open questions, but are you guys having trouble with productivity, or are you just enjoying watching us like
yammer on? They're all like, listen, I'm trying to watch this and write a novel. I'm productive.
Right? They're multitasking.
You know? Yeah.
No, that is true. So, and while we wait to see if anybody has questions, I did get a habit tracker the other day because I love doing things like, you know, writing them. Apps are not I do love apps, but these are the habits that I'm tracking. And
nice.
And at some point,
where did you get that? What is that?
I got this at Target.
Target.
I had been quarantining because I took my kid to college, and then at the end of the quarantine, my daughter's like, I need to do all the errands. And so so it's kind of cool because it shows you like things you can do,
nice.
how to use your vision pages and things like that. And And I find that every couple of months I go through some new practice of something, and then I switch. And I'm okay with switching. Like at first I was all like bummed out that I was switching. Like, oh, you're not sticking to one productivity thing. But I find that I go through these cycles of things. Like sometimes I put it all on my iPad and I've got these lists of things and I check them off and I really like the digital thing. And then sometimes like I really love, like I use these planners. I think this is the Clever Fox planner. And so it gives me a week and like, you know, monthly reviews and things like that. And then like all the notes are pretty much all, you know, filled up at this point. But I always have a planner going, but sometimes I don't use the planner. Sometimes I use, like I just have an ongoing list of to-dos that I do, and I put everything in my brain down and then I cross them off when I do them. And I've seen somebody do that, like I don't remember what it's called, but like the master list. And I rotate these things, and I used to have a problem with rotating things, but then I'm like,
no, that's my thing.
Right. Like that's my thing, is rotating these things. But let's see. Oh, Pam says, yes, Clever Fox, also Panda Planner. Yeah, that's where I got that from is, oh, and Kristen says, I'm putting washi tape on her new bullet journal. Nice. Yeah, so I don't see any oh wait, one question. Hold on. What is it? Oh, this is from Anna. Do you have any tips for getting back into a project you haven't worked on in a while? Sorry if you already covered this. I was multitasking. So we haven't, Anna. You didn't have to like, you know, put that in. We have not talked about that. So any tips for getting back into a project you haven't worked on in a while?
Yeah, this feels a little bit, it's kind of like these old "Can this marriage be saved" columns. Like, how do you spice things up when, you know, when you've spent time apart or whatever? And I feel like the answer is that you just have to remember, like, rediscover that person and like, and that project, and remember why you fell in love in the first place. And so I would actually plan one session where you're not like, okay, now I am writing this project, or now I am making way on this project, but rather like a session where you're getting reintroduced and you're falling back in love, and just accepting that that is, you know, you're going to need that time to remember what it was. And then if it's been a while that you've spent away.
Yeah, and I think that's so hard, right? We try to keep the thread going, you know, between projects and keep that kind of active, but that's not always possible. Anna, you can also send it to one of your critique partners. I don't know who that would be, but and I could get you jazzed up about it. But yeah, what other?
That's actually a great idea, because, you know, seeing it through someone else's eyes is like, again, I'm just like quoting from old "Can this marriage be saved" columns, but again, like, you know, seeing it with a fresh perspective can help you, like, again, remember what's so good about it. Just like when somebody compliments your kid and they're like, oh, your kid is so polite, and you're like, really? That's
not what I've been experiencing.
I know, and yet it's true, right? And yeah, I do love that kid. Yeah,
for sure. And that can be like the gift of time away, right? Is that perspective, you know, and you can see things a little bit more clearly. And that's good too. But yeah, it can be hard when we're, you know, losing that thread.
Yes.
I see Pam is back with us.
Like, yeah, I have a comment. I was going to type it in, but then I was like, I'll be faster if I just
tell us.
I'm so relieved to hear you guys talk about like switching tools, and as I'm slightly obsessed with all that kind of stuff, of course, my colored pens. And yeah, I already talked to Lisa about like, yeah, BookFlow needs to be color coded for me. That gives me satisfaction. And if you saw my pen collection, then you would understand a little better. And, you know, I have loaner pens, and then I have, you know, I dump out all my pens when someone says, can I borrow a pen? And then they reach, I'm like, don't touch them. I'll tell you which one you can borrow.
Anyway. I've been in that exact scenario with Pam before. I'm like, can I borrow a pen? And then it became like a thing.
I love color coding. I am
so helpful for me. But so
good.
I mentioned the the Panda Planner. My daughter likes the Panda Planner. I also have a Clever Fox. But then Rocketbook, you guys familiar with Rocketbook?
Yeah, I love Rocketbook.
I don't know.
Oh, well, Rocketbook is, you write in it, feels like paper, but then you can, it has like a, what do you call this, Heather?
Oh, a QR code.
QR code, yeah.
And then you can just send it to whatever place you want. Like you can email it to yourself, or you can put it in Google Drives, or, you know, you can designate where you want your stuff to go, and then you have it digitally, and then you can just wipe it off and use it again and again and again. And so
that's so cool. Love it.
So cool.
What a great tip.
Yes. So this one is cool.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's a great tip.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, when you have notebooks, you know, sometimes I feel like I write stuff in a notebook and then I'm like, oh, where did that go? But if you know, you can put it, you can download it, you get the Rocketbook app, and then you just kind of like take a picture of it or what basically, and it puts it into your place. And so, yeah,
right.
Some things like your roadmap and your obstacles and your distractions. And so I sometimes do that just for a particular project.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about ideas, and when we're working with ideas, when we're working in a notebook, right, there's like a 3-part process with all of that. You gotta spark that idea, you gotta have that idea, you've got to capture that idea, and then you've got to organize it so that you can work with it. So like, I think it's a good idea to just play around even for a short time every single day with writing, because you never know when you're going to come up with something good. But then you also have to say, okay, here's the time where I'm going to, like, maybe whether it's once a month or whatever it is, look back over those and then place them in a fashion that's usable. Otherwise they just go into the black hole of, well, I had that idea and then forgot all about it.
Well, most of my ideas are really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I only have good ideas, so that problem is solved. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to clarify. So.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Like 100% of them, right? They're
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
In that case, it's easy.
Well, yeah, I was in a conversation with my daughter the other day, and we were talking, I was just going off on this total tangent and being like, what if this? And then they should do that. And then what if, she's like, finally, she does not engage in the conversation at all. And she's like, why are you brainstorming pointless things? I'm like, that's what I do.
That's like my hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
my passion.
I thought the UPS truck should have, you know, they beep when they arrive and they beep when they depart. And I'm like, why don't they have their own song? Like, why don't they have their own, like, ice cream song kind of thing? And then, you know, because it's like, get this like adrenaline boost, like, oh, and then maybe FedEx has their own, and then you know who's who. Right.
It's like the ice cream truck.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. So I was trying to brainstorm some songs and some things that would be a good.
You went down the rabbit hole, Pam.
Oh, we were on a walk. I mean, what do you do, right? You just like talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not crazy, right?
Not crazy.
Sure. Okay.
Or the crazy we love, right?
Yeah. I call it creative, you know?
Yeah.
It's creative.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my.
Does anybody have any issues with productivity that they want us to brainstorm around? I'm psyched people are like hanging in here. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock. Lisa and I are just hanging out.
Yes.
Talking.
I should actually probably check in with my daughter, but yeah, at some point. But it has been so fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, and I think like I would love for everybody to just try BookFlow.
BookFlow, it's free for a couple of weeks. Give it a whirl. Yeah.
Just try it for a couple of weeks. See if you love it as much as I do, because it seriously upped my productivity so much. And I just want to thank you so much for that, Lisa, because I have tried every like possible writing tool out there, and this is the first one that I'm like, oh yeah, like this is it. Like this is the one we're staying with. And
that makes me so happy. I'm gonna go get a notebook and I'm gonna write it down.
You're gonna write it down. I can send it in an email and you can
print it out. And I'm gonna cut it out and put little stickers on it, like you did. I'm not even kidding. Like I love that idea.
All right, I'm gonna send you a thank you note tomorrow. So.
Thank you. All right.
Also, but your videos were awesome too.
Oh, thank you.
That were helpful. They were short. They were 10 minutes, but they were like just spot on with everything, you know, at least I was going through at that moment, and character stuff and plot and yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So anyone who, just so that people know, like if you sign up for BookFlow, you will automatically receive this 4-part video series that I did. It's 10 short, it's 4 10-minute videos, just about kind of analyzing your personal process. And then it talks about developing characters, developing plots, and developing themes, which is how BookFlow is laid out really for fiction. But I think it works for memoir and other things as well. So anyway, I'm so glad you found them useful, Pam. Thank you so much.
That was really helpful. Yeah.
And Pam, also in the supplementary like PDF, the downloadable PDFs that come with it, spotted a typo and I fixed it. I would like you to know. Thank you so much.
Did you say Pam found a typo and you
did?
It? Nice.
Like it says were, but I think it means it should be where, and it's like love it.
I didn't know if I didn't want to make you feel bad, but I feel like
you didn't make me feel bad. You made me feel awesome.
Yeah.
Like somebody read that.
Yeah.
So yes.
I love when our bars are that low. We're like, hey, somebody paid attention to something that I mean,
that's a close reading,
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So,
well, thank you for everybody.
So much.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. We'll see you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.